Welcome back to Dreams in Action. My guest today is Leland Atkinson. Leland began cooking professionally at the age of 14. He went on to complete his apprenticeship with Omni International, worked at the Ritz-Carlton and Red Sage in Washington, D.C. He has written recipes for many magazines, and now he has compiled his favorite into what he calls his dream book, Cocina, a hands-on guide to the techniques of Southwestern cooking. So is there a specific technique then, as opposed to just recipes?
We illustrate 15 different techniques from dealing with dried chilies, which I think a lot of people were confused with. I know when I first went to work at Red Sage, I had a lot of questions dealing with chilies and ingredients from all points in the world, primarily from Latin America and Mexico, that I didn't know how to deal with. And I went looking for this book in the bookstores and couldn't find it. So I had to write it myself.
Oh my God, we're going to talk a lot about the book, but at first I met you on the White House lawn.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
How have you been since?
How could I forget? Great. Great.
So what'd you think when I walked up and I was watching you there shivering in the cold and you're doing such a beautiful, was it a deer that you were carving?
It was a reindeer,
gorgeous.
yeah. We were doing it,
We're going to go to a clip soon to showing you actually do some ice carving. So you're so multifaceted. Not only do you create recipes, you're a chef, you're an author, and you also do the ice carvings.
Right. Well, my original dream was to be an artist, and life sort of got in the way and wasn't able to fulfill that dream. So through the culinary arts, doing the ice carvings and tallow sculptures, and the photography for the book, it was a way to actually realize that dream.
Yeah. Now, when you are actually doing the ice carvings, what goes? I mean, what do you have to do? Does the saw get very heavy on you?
There's some vibration. You start with a 370-pound block of ice, solid block of ice, and you have to take it out of the wok and let it temper, as you'll see here, where basically.
Where do you get a block of ice that size?
There are ice companies that specialize in carving blocks. Actually, in the old days, that was the crushed ice. They would feed them to the crusher. And as you see, we're making an eagle here. And we're basically taking the block of ice and taking away everything that is an eagle.
So you use a hatchet, you use a saw?
We began with a chainsaw, and now I'm using chisels, which are specifically designed for that. When I was first beginning, I just used wood chisels that I bought at Sears. The Japanese and the Germans make wonderful chisels that are designed just for that purpose. About 90% of the work I do with a chainsaw, and the rest I do. These are German chisels made with carbon steel.
My goodness.
I was lucky enough to be able to work at the White House part-time, doing state dinners and gala receptions, helping the chef and his staff there. And that's how I got involved in that. And they knew I could carve ice, so when they did the gala, they called me up and asked if I'd like to come out. And you don't get many opportunities to carve ice on the White House lawn.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Of course I had to do it.
It's beginning to take shape now.
Right. Again, you see us, we're using the chainsaw. We're making what we call safety cuts with a chainsaw, so that when you hit it with a chisel, you'll see here in a minute, I actually broke the wing off. I broke this twice. You'll see the beak disappears at one point, and then mysteriously, through the magic of television, it comes back. You're about to see here, I'm about to break the wing off. There it was.
Oh, you caught it.
I'm glad we didn't have the sound, because I said something that probably wouldn't have been aired on television.
Oh, now how do you put it back together? What do you do? Just stick it back on?
With the wing, we were lucky we had gravity working for us, so we just held it in place for a while, and it actually knitted very quickly.
Oh.
And with the beak, I actually had to take some crushed ice. You see the ice that's coming off the chainsaw? I had some of that collect on the ground, and I used that to just sort of pack into
looking.
It's getting there. I did this in about 45 minutes. My sous chef was injured this day. They took him out in an ambulance, and I didn't have a lot of time. We had to get back into the kitchen, so I only had about 45 minutes on this particular ice carving. Usually takes about an hour and a half.
Wonderful. Now, do you do a lot of different events for ice carving, or is it seasonal, or is it for special events like weddings, or?
I use them in conjunction with my job for weddings. A lot of times, I mean, I can do a swan with my eyes closed now. I've done so many swans for weddings over the course of my career. But we do seafood buffets, and I've done a lot of company logos. For companies that want their image created in ice, and they're actually very dramatic. I wish we had some film of them actually with the proper lighting and everything. It's really beautiful in a dark ballroom when they're lit from underneath and behind with colored lights, and it's.
Oh, really? So you can
really
actually
nice
project lights into the bird.
We use special pans that are fluorescent lights, and you can put colored gels over them.
Oh, how neat.
And then you set the ice on top of that, and the light actually comes up. It has to thaw for a little bit so that it becomes translucent or transparent, and the light comes up, and it's a wonderful part of the effect. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. But your true love is creating recipes. And take us back to when you started at the age of 14, when that dream was born for you. Who created this passion in you?
When I was 14, we had a country restaurant, Tom Flynn's plantation-style restaurant in our neighborhood. And I used to walk up there, ride my bike up there. It was about a mile away. And I just sort of started hanging out in the back and talking to the cooks, and I started there washing dishes. And one of the cooks called in sick one day, and so there was wonderful old black ladies cooking basically soul food, fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread. but the best cooks I'd ever been associated with, and I just fell in love with what they were doing, the science of the cooking, and just being intuitive and.
I like the way that you
creative.
call it the science of the cooking, because I guess it is true, an
Well,
art and a science.
Absolutely, especially in baking, in terms of baking and pastry, where you're worried about leavening, and there is a science to make sure that things are properly cooked, and to make sure that you get the result that you're looking for. You have to understand the science of the food and how it works.
So when you create a recipe, is it a lot by trial and error, or do you pretty much know that this amount of salt for this amount of meat? I mean, because I'm not a really good cook, but you know, how do you create the spices and make sure that things don't clash with one another?
It's just trial and error. I mean,
It
it's
is.
like anything else. You learn the fundamentals first. You learn basic recipes and learn how to and learn composition. And then as you move on and become more established and more comfortable with your skills, you try things. It doesn't always work. I mean, that's why that's why chefs love to run specials in restaurants. It gives you a chance to try things. And if it works, great. We'll put it on the menu. And if it doesn't, you just hope that people weren't too upset when they left. And it's usually once you develop a repertoire and you're comfortable in your skills, you very rarely disappoint. Some things are better than others. Some things are always better than others. It's just great fun to
I
try
guess
to
I
come up
get-
with something new.
Yeah, I guess it's like any business, because something that you create, you may love, and somebody else may love, but yet another person may not really care for it. So
Right.
it is like any other business. It's quite competitive, and you're always worried about whether it's going to be successful, you know?
Right. You're always frustrated by the negative comments and the negative feedback that you get, but you understand.
But you don't get that much.
No, it's pretty rare, luckily. But you also have to understand that it's not always that you did something wrong or that the food wasn't good. But people's tastes are so different. You could cook
Absolutely.
the same thing for 100 different people, and 99 of them would love it, and one would just think it was the worst thing he'd ever had. So you understand that.
That's
when
right.
When you get the feedback.
And we're talking about some of the recipes and how you create them. Did you select your favorite recipes for this particular project that you're working on, or was it according to the theme of Southwest Cooking and other people contributed? How did it come about?
Well, the spirit of the book is to take the fear out of Southwestern cooking, because I think a lot of people are afraid of it because they don't understand the ingredients. There's hundreds of different chilies, literally, and I was intimidated by them. Didn't know how to use dried chilies versus fresh chilies. Different techniques that are not basically as a professionally trained chef. I was schooled in French or European cooking techniques, where Southwestern Latin cuisine is based more on Native American cooking techniques, which are quite a bit different. So there's different cooking techniques and different ingredients that I wanted to take the intimidation out of, things that like I said, I didn't know how to deal with when I first started cooking the food. I went out in bookstores looking for this book and couldn't find it. And so I had.
And you wanted to, because you enjoyed cooking that.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Now, take us to like a typical day when you said, okay, now we're working on this book project, so we're going to need some photos, we're going to need the recipes, we're going to need to have, some text to it.
Right.
How does it all come together?
It was almost like a dream. I remember I was walking with my wife down the bike trail in Arlington, and I was just thinking about things. I'd always wanted to write a book. I'd always wanted to write a cookbook. During my apprenticeship, I'd written my first proposal, and the idea came to me almost fully formed. I mean, I just started working at Red Sage, and I was thinking, there's got to be a way to do this, and the idea just appeared. And I went home and wrote like a two-page outline, and had been working with the editor on another book, Mark Miller, who owns the Red Sage, and was able to just get started. They loved the idea, and so it was a complicated process, writing the outline, deciding what to include and what to leave out. The original draft of the book was like twice as large as the original book ended up. One of the challenges was finding the props of Southwestern cookware and ingredients and backgrounds. We're here on the East Coast, and we did all the photography here, so I didn't really have the access to a lot of the native ingredients. So we had to borrow things. I made the backgrounds myself, distressing wood and beating it up and painting it and rubbing the paint off, trying to make it look like it was 100 years old when I just bought it at Heckinger's that morning. So that was probably the most fun, was the photography and creating. As a cook, when you create something, your last meal, as soon as it's eaten, it's gone. As soon as the event is over and the ice carving is thrown in the parking lot by the dumpster, it's gone.
Right.
I wanted to create something that was going to last. And I think
But you were not the photographer.
I was not the photographer. I styled the food and made the backgrounds. Renee Comet, who does the photography for the Washington Post food section, and she did her own book, The Artful Pie, which is a very, very beautiful book, and I just loved her work, and we hit it off very well, and we became quite good friends through the process. It was quite hard. Going through all the photography was very challenging. We both had very distinct ideas about what we wanted in the photography, so we did some arguing, but I think we got some very nice photographs as a result of the collaboration.
And you mentioned a gentleman by the name of Mark Miller, which I read a little bit in the opens, that he was essentially like your mentor to really help you to
Absolutely.
even realize this dream.
Absolutely. He was the chef and owner of Red Sage and also the Coyote Cafe in New Mexico. And sort of really embraced me and taught me the basics of Southwestern cooking and helped demystify it for me. And through helping him with some of his cookbooks, again, I got involved in writing, which is something I've always wanted to do.
Now, is Southwestern cooking primarily spicy?
It is spicy, but I think the misconception that people make is if you go to eat a Southwestern meal, the spice is just going to blow the back of your head off. It's just going to be so spicy that you're going to be guzzling margaritas and beer. The chilies, like I said, there are hundreds of different chilies, and they all have different flavor components. It's almost like tasting dried chilies. It's almost like tasting red wines. I mean, you taste tannins and tobacco and different fruits, dried cherries and different flavor combinations, and just finding which chilies to pair with which foods. It's really very sophisticated. And the thing that intrigued me and surprised me the most about the food was how sophisticated it was, because I think a lot of us think of Southwestern cuisine and Mexican cuisine and Latin American cuisines as the kind of food where you go if you're going to drink a pitcher of beer and just have
and have a
just
taco.
For good, right? Exactly, and it's much more sophisticated than that. And it's much more satisfying than that.
Like, what would be a typical meal, a Southwestern meal?
Typical Southwestern meal. I think well, there's some flautas in the book that I love a lot. That it's sort of a European and Southwestern mix. So there's a flauta in there with blue cheese and pears and caramelized onions that I make a nice salad with a red wine vinaigrette. There's probably start with a little tamale tart, which we make in the book, which is tamale dough that I line in a tart pan. It's very similar to a quiche, but it has a rustic toasted corn character, and of course flan, everybody's favorite. There's an orange and canela or cinnamon flan.
That's a dessert,
right? Absolutely. Which I think everybody thinks that as the quintessential Mexican or Latin dessert.
Yeah.
And so the possibilities are endless.
Yes, it's so true. It's sort of it's different to see a white Caucasian man do a book such as this on the East Coast.
Right.
Well, you know what I mean? You're not even living in the Southwest or things like that. So I think it's a wonderful dream that you've achieved it and are being successful with it.
Well, the original subtitle of the book was A Gringo's Guide to Southwestern Cooking, because I wanted to make sure that...
Say it again?
A Gringo's Guide to Southwestern Cooking, Gringo being a white guy.
Right.
Because, again, what I wanted... I wrote the book for people like me who were intrigued by the cuisine and wanted to learn more and wanted to hone their skills and didn't know how to go about it. The publisher hated the subtitle, so that's where we ended up with
Didn't like it.
Ended up with something. They wanted something that they thought would be a little less flip, a little more serious.
A little more serious. That's right. Now, speaking of the publisher, there's a little story behind how that came about, right? Because at first you had submitted your book proposal to various places, and it did not get accepted, and then...
Well, when I first decided I wanted to write, I read everything I could read about the process and how do you write a cookbook. I'd always wanted to do it, and I sent proposals to publishers all over, and of course they'd never heard of me. I mean, who is this guy? I wasn't even a full-fledged chef at that point, but I just had ideas and I was creative, and it's something that I really wanted to do. So of course, the proposals were not that good. I mean, to be honest with myself. So it takes time. You have to mature and learn. And when I was working for Mark Miller at Red Sage, the gentleman that tested the recipes for him for his other books quit. And they had a book that was ready to go to press, but they needed 12 more recipes tested. So the little light went off, and I said, okay. Most cooks, or most chefs, when they turn in recipes, it's on a yellow legal pad with the gravy stains and, hardly legible, dull pencil where you can hardly read it. So I turned them in double-spaced and on the computer disk, and reasonably well written. And so they said, hey, this isn't the way chefs usually do this.
This guy can write.
Right. So the editor would call and ask for questions, ask for clarification on some of the techniques and procedures and the recipes. And so just struck up a rapport with him, and through him with the publisher, 10-Speed Press. And I just said, hey, I've got an idea for this. Cookbook. What do you guys think? And I said, well, send us a proposal and we'll see. And they bought it on the first day, which usually
10-Speed Press is a huge press.
They're very big. They do beautiful cookbooks, and are. I'm really happy and gratified to have gone through it all. Yeah.
I'm glad that it worked out for you. We're going to go to another short break, and we'll come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about copyright laws and how do you protect, the fact that, somebody doesn't say, well, that was my recipe. Right. Why did you put it in your book? Things like that. I'm sure things like that come up. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Dreams in Action. My guest today is Leland Atkinson, and Leland's the author of Cocina. And we're talking about some of his favorite recipes. And I was about to ask you about the copyright situation with books. I know that you can copyright certain ways that words are said, but the actual ingredients you can't copyright. You can't copyright 1 cup of sugar, right?
No. I have never heard of recipes being challenged in terms of copyright.
Oh, okay.
I've heard from other chefs that you need to change 3 ingredients or 3 proportions to satisfy the boundaries of copyright law. But I think it's very hard to prove the origin of a recipe, as I understand it. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of any lawsuits resulting or anyone getting in trouble for it.
Oh, well, that's good.
I think if recipes are identical, there's some squabbling or whatever, but I don't think there's ever been any real battles in court over ownership of recipes. I may be wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, well, you probably would know about that situation. Some of the people, I really liked what at the beginning when you say here, some of the things like you acknowledge some of the people who helped achieve this dream for you.
Right.
You know,
There are a
and
lot
you
of people
say
involved.
to Renee's assistant Esther, where's the fire extinguisher, Del Rosario, who kept us organized and laughing, and also shirked her photographic and administrative duties to serve as the hand model for a lot of
Right.
these photos.
A lot of procedural shots, and she had beautiful hands, and so we used her. We made her stop answering the phone and stop filing photos and get in there, and those are her hands there. Yeah.
Oh, right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I also
Wonderful.
burned all the, there's a lot of flaming shots. There's some pictures in there of cooking steaks over a grill. And it's an interesting technique where you'll have a little can of sterno or a small flame, and you'll spray WD-40 into it, which is a lubricant, which is spray oil, and spray that into the flame, and you get this spectacular flame for just a half a second.
Oh, just for the picture.
Right, just for a very, very split second. And once we were through with the shot, and everyone was relaxed, and we'd gotten it on film. And I got up and I leaned on the can of WD-40 and shot this big blast of oil into the flame. And while her hands were still in location, and so it didn't hurt her, but we were all just in shock for
Because you
just a
thought her
moment.
hand was
All the hair was singed off her hands and upper forearms, and she was shrieking. I mean, she was. I thought I'd done something really horrible for a moment.
Was that the most surprising moment, or the
That
most?
was the most surprising moment.
What are the other things that challenged you quite a bit? It just, I guess, partly in your career and partly in putting this together.
In putting the book together, one of the challenges that I had was, the publisher says, "Okay, we want you to write this book, and we're going to pay you to do it, and this is the book that we expect you to create." And I think they have a different vision and a different idea of what the book is going to be than I had. So a lot of it was, coming together and reaching a compromise. We're 3,000 miles away, so over the telephone, like I said, the first draft of the book that I turned in was twice as long as it should have been. And to take your baby, something that you've worked on for a year, and say, well, okay, now I have to take 50% of this and put it in a
Ouch.
drawer. What do you leave out? What do you leave in? Anytime you collaborate, and the art of collaboration always leads to compromise, and usually, hopefully, it leads to a better result. But the biggest frustration was getting everyone to understand and appreciate and agree on what the finished product should be and look like.
And is everybody happy with it?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that
For sure.
I'm happy with the result, and we'll see. I'd love to do it again. So take what I've learned and move forward and put it into another book.
Are you
Is it-
planning to do that? Maybe perhaps a different cuisine style or things like that?
I have some ideas that I'm knocking around. And my next project is going to be a child with my wife. We're having a baby, so that's going to take some time.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And between job and raising the child and doing justice to all the things that you have to do justice. So I want to do this, and it's something I'll definitely get back to hopefully soon. I have some ideas, and hopefully we'll bat them back and forth and see what happens.
The recipe certainly won't be as creative with the baby, huh? Mashed peas.
Well, we
and
won't be
things.
doing a baby
Okay.
food cookbook.
No. Well, also this book, which is won a humongous honor, the Julia Child Award. How does that come about?
The year that the book won the award, there were 472 cookbooks written, and
How many?
472
in 1 year.
Which I had no idea until I learned I was nominated. I had no idea how many books I was competing against. It was a staggering number of books. The recommended categories, and this one in the food reference technical category. We were up against I think it's the Idiot's Guide or the Dummy's Guide to Cooking, and a couple of other books, and judged by your peers. International Association of Culinary Professionals evaluated the book. They all got a copy, and they evaluated the book and voted on it. And we went to Chicago, and were lucky enough to win the award.
And then you said when you stood there in front of all your peers.
As your viewers are learning, I'm a very shy man, and I'd never done any public speaking. I'd never gotten up in front of a crowd before, and the winner is Leland Atkinson, and I got up on the stage in front of 3,000 people and just said, didn't say much. Don't really remember what I said other than thanking my wife, which nobody could understand because I was stuttering, but I got through it, and it was great fun, and gave me the confidence I needed to go forth and promote the book and do some more things. So I'm teaching cooking classes now and doing some other things that I enjoy a lot that came as a result of the book. I wouldn't have gotten into the things had it not been for the book.
Right. Now, with food, especially with fine cuisine like this, isn't the presentation like half the battle? I mean, do you have to worry a lot about how it's presented on the plate? I mean, French food's always arranged in a certain way and things like that.
Absolutely. People eat with their eyes, and I think presentation is one of the... People go to a restaurant, and that's how they evaluate the food.
Like that is presented very beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you. My goal as a chef is to stop conversation when the food goes out in the room. That's why the trend now is towards very tall architectural presentations, and that the poor waiter has to try to balance as he walks through the dining room. My goal as a chef is to sit out in the dining room and watch people stop talking and watch the food go by. But the older I get, the more I concentrate on flavors and the composition of the meal. It doesn't matter how pretty the food is, really. It's how you feel about it when you're eating. There's just an internal satisfaction you get from eating a great meal. And I think a lot of chefs, I don't know, I was certainly guilty of it when I was younger, concentrating on the wow and all the garnish and the fluff and the things that stop the conversation. And then when food is presented to you, it's not that interesting to eat. So I think now I worry less about presentation than I did, and more about the flavor, more about the flavor and how the flavors and different components balance out.
Now, so if there was somebody in the audience watching that perhaps has that same love for food and cooking and perhaps becoming a chef someday, perhaps they're not in the right job at this moment, what would you recommend for them? And how would they polish up their skills? Would there be training that they could do? How would they start in this very competitive field?
Well, I think if you're interested in taking it on professionally, I would find a good chef, find the best restaurant in your town, and contact the chef and say, I want to work with you. Even if it's just for a day, you don't have to pay me. Come in and spend a day and make sure that it's what you want to do. You read everything you can read. There's a lot of good schools here in the area. L'Académie de Cuisine is very good. There's another culinary school in Baltimore if you're looking at it professionally. If you're looking at it personally, again, they're great cooking classes, again, through L'Académie. Read everything you can, eat everything you can, evaluate everything you can, approach everything with an analytical mind, and don't give up.
Wonderful.
Right.
Leland, thank you very much for joining me today.